Well, I still feel that City are the team to watch, to be honest, and team to fear, I should say. Arsenal have given themselves an amazing opportunity, but we have been here before. This is the sort of kind of team fit you fear in the rear view mirror, isn't it?
NordVPN, cybersecurity built for every day.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Seeing Red unofficial Arsenal podcast with your host Tom Canton, Arsenal reporter for football.london and The Mirror, and chief football writer at The Mirror, Mr. John Cross. How you doing, mate? You good? You well?
Yeah, good, thank you. Thawed out after Fratton Park yesterday, so yeah.
Tad, yeah. I tell you what, I'm more calm now that I have Wi-Fi that works, John. That's
it was shall we say it was a step back in time. I've been to Fratton Park so many times. And they are trying to sort of kind of do it up outside, and I like what they're doing. Actually, they're trying to sort of kind of turn it into a little, almost had, because the little sort of kind of little lights outside. It felt like Christmas markety, and but my word, it felt a bit cold. But the great thing was about the press box was so cramped and tight that basically everyone kept each other warm. Although I'm not sure that Gary Jacob from the Times has been completely appreciated my closeness to him, but Ed Aarons was much from the Guardian was much more accommodating. And then the sort of kind of what I loved about it, they were so welcoming. They baked a cake, hadn't they?
I didn't get any cake. I missed all the cake.
Oh, you missed an absolute belter. Absolutely lovely little coffee walnut cake. It was lovely.
Oh, okay.
Really nice.
I did appreciate the pies. Pies are very nice.
Yeah, and then they sort of kind of, someone passed around their sort of tins of Quality Street and stuff at half time.
Yeah.
Oh, how nice was that?
Yeah, it was lovely. Yeah. The nice lady on the desk kind of came up to the press box. I got a packet of digestives went round our row, some Malwams. Other sweets are available. But you know, that was the highlight from an off-pitch perspective, certainly. Yes. But when at the end of the game, I was frantically trying to find an Ethernet port to plug my laptop in so I could actually submit my player ratings at full time, because it was chaotic. It meant that I actually could watch more of the game than I usually can, because usually my head's buried in my laptop for so much of it. And it was an entertaining one. We're going to come on to Portsmouth. But we're going to kick off with the game against Liverpool on Thursday, because, of course, we've not had a podcast recording since then. Of course, me and John have been rarely, for once, actually both at both games together. So we've got the experience shared between us. And I remember saying to you before the game, I was like, 3-0. It's going to be fine. Didn't turn out to be anything like that. And
I did tell you, didn't I? One time you don't listen to me. No. I know. Yeah, well, close. It was because I think that the opportunity had been built up so much, maybe, and basically in two themes really: the opportunity to go 8 points clear, and the opportunity of playing a Liverpool team who are missing big players. You know, Salah, Isaac. You know, I mean, I think sort of Curtis Jones did come on, but basically they're just lots of players sort of kind of missing, and what have you. And so Ekitike, obviously, and it felt like an opportunity for Arsenal. It felt at the end like an opportunity wasted. I did also feel as if, you know, Arsenal didn't do themselves justice. I actually think, looking back, I think that Arsenal played better in the first half than maybe we gave them credit, or we realised at the time. But I do feel Liverpool were the better team in the second half, and therefore had the momentum at the right time, if you like, to perhaps win it. Although their XG, didn't manage a single shot on target. Obviously, Bradley hits the bar first half. And then you just feel as if, wow, that's an opportunity wasted, really, isn't it? That's the problem. Yeah. So it was just from that point of view, that perspective, I think. So that was the disappointment. I mean, for me, there were two things really that we've kind of got to look at, which were Victor Gyökeres, who I think had his worst game in an Arsenal shirt. It's not working. You know, it's just not working. I unfortunately, I think somewhere along the line, brutal decision has to be made and take him out, and basically say, okay, but give someone else a go. I admire Arteta for almost trying to play his way into form. I personally don't think he's at a technical level with the other players. I've always felt that. And then but he brings his own quality, I guess, which is hard work and basic tireless effort for the team. And he's appreciated, and that therefore has bought him time and a lot of credit with a lot of fans, basically. But I think there's a bit of patience running out there. And the other one with Red Warning Lights is Myles Lewis-Skelly, who I didn't think was great again against Portsmouth, to be honest. And I think so much of that, I don't know whether you agree, Tom, is about rhythm. It's about kind of being match sharp, being confident. His belief must have taken a huge hit from barely playing this season. And all of a sudden, from being a superstar last year to suddenly being on the bench, it's hard. I know he's a kid and he's still developing and all that. But come on, your natural reaction is still going to be some disappointment and, some kind of, it's not quite working for him yet, really, which is a great shame, I think.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you on both parts. I think it's rhythm. I think it's consistency of minutes and exposure and confidence and all of these things combining for Lewis-Skelly, because we know his talent. We know how good he can be. We saw that last season, not just for Arsenal, but in a senior international level with England as well. And it must be difficult to go from a point of playing every single week to sitting on the bench to being even third choice behind Nketiah as well as Calafiori. So that must be hard. And you do lose your rhythm. You do lose that confidence. So when the ball comes to feet, your connections with the players around you, your understanding of where that next pass needs to go, of where your teammates are going to be at that point, in that point of the game, at that time, again, is somewhat compromised. And I thought he grew into the game against Portsmouth in the second half in particular. Obviously, he's responsible for the quick free kick that Arsenal took. But you're absolutely spot on. He just looks a complete shadow of himself from the previous campaign, and I have confidence that he'll absolutely respond and bounce back and improve, because he's only 19. He's a young player, and rightfully Nketiah and Calafiori ahead of him because they're more senior players and they're showing better form this season. But he needs to do more when those chances come, as they did in the last two games, and unfortunately he didn't take those opportunities. Just quickly on Gyökeres as well, some of the numbers that were coming out this weekend, Sam Dean wrote a piece for the Telegraph which was very scathing, of Victor as well, and not because it's not unworthy, because the reality is for Arsenal is that they have an unbelievable chance this season to win the Premier League, and I think there is concerns that if they don't win the Premier League, it could potentially be because they haven't made the decision about the centre forward early enough in the campaign. I think you're right. Arteta was right to stick with him, try and play him into form. But that's not working, and it's not happening. And we saw in the Palace game that Gabriel Jesus started. Arsenal recorded their highest XG of the season, 3.63, when Jesus started that match. And I was curious to see with Jesus starting against Portsmouth, again, what would be the case. And they again broke that 3 XG barrier, 3.12 in the game. Wasn't as high as Palace. And I didn't think Jesus was particularly amazing, but it's more about the style and the profile of centre forward and how that then influences the rest of the play. And it just seems like Arsenal, with Kai coming back and I think impressing in his cameo as well, it shows you what the potential could be for the second half of the season if a change is made there.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I did like Kai Havertz. I thought he was sharp. I thought he was on it. For him, I think it's all about, Arteta's been raving about him in training, isn't he? And kind of, how sharp he's looked in his finishing. And I think for him, it's all about kind of playing his way back in, making sure that the load is not too great early on. But you'd like to think by February that Havertz will come back. He's such a good technical player. And I feel that part of the issue with Gyökeres is that, I feel a bit sorry for him in that basically, his touch, number of touches against Liverpool was 8. Which is very, very low in 64 minutes. But, really, really poor. And basically, very poor contribution across the game. So he's then trying to drop deep to get himself involved in the game more. But then when a couple of balls were flashed across the box, he's then not there because he's trying to link up. And it's a bit of a vicious cycle. So I do have some sympathy for him. But I do think I think ultimately we're going to judge him, Arsenal season on him a lot. And I know he contributes and he sort of kind of, opens up play. And clearly his teammates like him and he's a likable guy. I do think the other aspect is that Andrea Berta, there's no doubt about it, championed this signing ahead of, someone like Isesco, for example. And basically, there's judgment calls going to be made on that. And basically, how Arsenal end up this season. I think you're right, basically. I do think that basically a lot of it will come down to that. It feels to me at the moment, it's cruel to say it, Arsenal on occasion have played with 10 men. It certainly felt like that against Liverpool. In fairness to him at Bournemouth, for example, it certainly wasn't that. because basically he did sort of kind of get involved and lead the chase and stuff. And I've sort of been clear, he obviously got injured at Burnley, for example, just at a time when I thought he was hitting his groove. And yeah, that's cruel timing for him. But I do think he just looks good. Havertz, I think personally can't come back quick enough. And yeah, it's rough on Gyökeres, but I think now, frankly, is most definitely the time to take him out for big games.
I think it is time, and interestingly enough, though, as we'll talk about Chelsea towards the end of the show, I still feel as though with him being fully rested, he probably starts against Chelsea in the first leg of the semi-final. But it's a weird one because in a season of so much good, and with the potential to be one of the best seasons ever, there's this nagging situation that we can't seem to escape. And some fans turn around and say, stop talking about it, stop talking about him, take the pressure off. We can't do that. It's a reality of the season. We need to talk about the big talking points, and he absolutely is one because everyone is talking about him at the moment. Yes, I think he needs support. No, we're not ruling him out as an option for Arsenal in the future and saying that we're coming to conclusions about him now. I think for the betterment of his Arsenal career, he needs some reprieve and he needs to be taken out the spotlight. And I think that is helped by Jesus now being fully ready and back and fit, and Kai now coming back as well. And I truly believe that I think Kai can become maybe even the catalyst that takes Arsenal on to the title this season with his return. And I'm hopeful that we see him integrating a lot more effectively over the course of this month and then officially kind of fully back in February. Martinelli.
Can I make you laugh? I make you laugh very quickly. I did a little bit of radio.
No pressure.
I did I don't know. Just a quirky one rather than uproarious, hilarious, because I don't think I can ever do that, really. I'm not that funny. But basically, I did a little bit of radio on Saturday, and the presenter was a Liverpool fan. And basically, he did say we were talking about just off air, really, about Gyökeres. This will make you laugh because I think Arsenal fans, we all, and he'll be the same. We all go around in this little bubble thinking, "Oh my God, everyone's talking about Gyökeres. It's such a big issue and stuff." And he actually said to me, "Gyökeres has really gone under the radar, hasn't he? How bad he's been." And it's just from a different perspective, isn't it? Sort of thing. Really, it feels like to me that we've spoken about him a hell of a lot.
Yeah.
But then sometimes it's like, if you're a Man United fan, you're probably thinking up until this point, what about Sesko? And everyone's talking about Sesko. It's just a weird one, isn't it? So I do think within our little world, there's been a lot of focus on him. In the greater global scale, I think we have to sometimes keep it in perspective a little bit.
It's interesting. Yeah, you easily get sucked into thinking that Arsenal is the be all and end all, and there aren't things beyond that. But yeah, it's and look, Arsenal fans will psychologically focus in more on Arsenal and the discussions around Arsenal, and that obviously makes us kind of sometimes pull a wool over our own eyes to what is the bigger picture, and maybe he's not being talked about as broadly. It certainly feels like he is from an Arsenal point of view, but from a broader one, maybe not. Martinelli had a juxtaposed week, really. Certainly, he ended the game against Liverpool with that incident, which I think, ironically, has sparked one of the best managerial responses I think I've ever seen to a controversial moment in the case of Arne Slot and what he said after the game, where he spoke about how the problem is not to do with Martinelli pushing Conor Bradley off the pitch, but more so that there is a time-wasting issue that has psychologically embedded itself into the mind of fans and players and coaches, that now we believe when a player is actually injured that they're probably just time-wasting. And he spoke really well. He diffused the situation. He took the emphasis off Martinelli. It didn't take the emphasis off Martinelli in the broader scheme of kind of how he was discussed in different broadcast circles and in different media and online and on social media as well. He did get battered, Martinelli, for that action. But I'll give you my thoughts and I'll let you shoot the stars on it. I feel as though it was an idiotic thing to do. There's no doubt about that. Like pushing the guy off the pitch. I have a little bit of sympathy for him because the replays do kind of show Bradley's edging himself like onto the pitch, and Martinelli clearly sees that happen. But he dropped the ball onto him before he did that, before he started to kind of crawl back on. So he was already in a mindset of, this is rubbish. So look, I think that the reaction we saw against Portsmouth was great. And I think that the Portsmouth fans booing him show that this could be a thing that, transcends just, these circles, and he'll probably get some responses wherever he goes now. He's probably thankful that we've already played Liverpool twice now this season and probably won't play them again. But what are your thoughts on the incident and then his response, of course, on Sunday?
I would totally echo your thoughts on Slot, simply because, post match, you went into the press conference, didn't you? And then basically I went down to the mix zone, and Virgil van Dijk spoke to us. Actually, an Arsenal player didn't come forward to speak, which I have to say, by the way, I think it's a bit of a shame. Because I just feel it's worth reiterating here, right? At the end of Arsenal's game against Liverpool, right, at the end of Christmas and New Year, if you like, because that was that block of games before the Cup.
Yeah.
Arsenal was 6 points clear.
Yeah.
Now, forgive me, Tom, right? Basically, going into Christmas, right, was it 2 points?
I think so. Yeah.
What a return.
I know.
I mean, okay, they didn't go 8 points, but they're 6 points clear.
Yeah.
They gained 4 points. It's astonishing. It's really, really, really impressive. And come out and beat the drum. Brilliant. And okay, I know it's disappointing, but I tell you what, I thought that was a bit of an opportunity. And then they're basically, I think someone should have been beating the drum, because the next day, my timeline and sort of kind of everything was filled with Virgil van Dijk.
Yeah.
He was saying that I wasn't, the whole dressing room wasn't happy with Martinelli, or we're back on track. And basically, we're beginning to turn the corner because it's 10 games unbeaten. We played well. And so Bosley, by the way, before the game, had done an interview with Pat Davison, I think, that was
quite
really
inflammatory.
helpful. Yeah, basically fantastic. And I thought, blimey, if I'm a Liverpool player in that dressing room, listening to Szoboszlai, who, by the way, has been really great in a sort of a very disappointing season, saying that actually, we are the champions. Give us some respect. We'll go to Arsenal believing we're champions, and we are champions for a very good reason, and they've got to beat us. And they didn't, did they? That was the point. And I love that rallying cry. And I think if we talk about the kind of the use and messages and messaging through the media, I promise you, listeners, right, this is not just us saying, disappointed to get an interview. It's about using the media, being proactive, being on the front foot, using your PR strength. And I thought that was an opportunity wasted, but one seized by Liverpool pre and post. And, then I caught up on Slot afterwards, and Slot was terrific, in his sort of kind of, evaluation of it. I also watched afterwards and saw, I thought, in my mind, that Martinelli hasn't seen a full version of basically Bradley. When you see the replay, it's heartbreaking to see. And he's such a young player with so much enthusiasm, with so much skill and ability. And it's just, oh, God, you think, crikey, that's terrible to see. And it's heartbreaking to see.
Yeah.
And I personally don't think that Martinelli's got the full view. He said afterwards, didn't fully understand the extent of the injury. And I completely believe him, to be honest, because I don't believe that any pro would knowingly throw a ball down. Roy Keane might against Alfie and Garland. I don't know that, any other pro would basically, an injured, stricken player. You just don't do that. It just doesn't happen. And I thought some of the comments about him, it was idiotic, but he's not an idiot.
No.
He's
Gary Neville's commentary, I don't know if you heard it back, was awful.
Yeah, it surprised me a bit, because I just don't believe that basically, all things being equal, Gary Neville will go for a player like that, knowing the full sort of set of circumstances. So, I've got to say, I think he's outstanding as a pundit and also as a co-coms, and basically, brilliant. But I do think on that one, Martinelli definitely misread the room, but so did some of the commentary around it. I have to say, I think. And I think Peter Drury said, watching it back, didn't he say that basically Martinelli's misread the room? Well, I think that's fair, to be honest. Yeah. And, because he just didn't know the full extent of it. So in my experience, he's I don't want to go down he's not that type of player, but in my experience, he's a kind of a nice, honest lad who's basically just playing for football, and basically not much side to him. I just don't think you do that to a fellow, particularly young player. I just don't, I don't think that's on his radar. So I felt really sorry for him. I think you're right, Tom. I think he might come up against a lot this season. about sort of reaction to it, and basically he's kind of got to play through that, and it's a test of his mental strength. And I like what Arteta said about him post match yesterday. So I feel a bit sorry for the kid, really, because no way in the world that he's knowingly done that.
No. And to see that response was so good. The celebrations, the goals in themselves, because I don't remember him really being that brilliant in the air since the days when he first arrived. Like when he first arrived at Arsenal, he burst onto the scene as like an 18-year-old. He was starting up front under Unai Emery in the Europa League games, and he was scoring headers when crosses were being put into the box. And it was like, oh wow, this has got this young, diminutive Brazilian that's got a bit of a different edge to him, a different style about him. And that kind of faded until more recently in this game, where he scored, 2 headers from corners. He easily could have had a 4th or a 5th in this game as well. He hit the post from close range. He had that curling finesse shot, which was really well taken, but just quite slightly just didn't judge the angle of the shot quite right, but looked all the world like it was going to head in from where we were sitting behind the shot being taken in the press box. So he could have easily had 5. And with Trossard in as good a form as he has been in this season, it gives Arteta another selection headache and another idea. Do you try and harness that form that he's got, or do you utilise the fact that you've been able to fully rest Trossard for this game? He didn't even travel for this game. He was, left at home to be ready for the games against Chelsea and Nottingham Forest, we imagine. And so he's got a decision to make now. Does he try and harness that form, or does he go for Trossard? I mean, what would you do if you're Mikel?
Yeah, I'd probably... I think it would be hard on Martinelli to drop him out. So I'd probably go with Martinelli.
He did drop Madueke after those 2 goals in Bruges.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. And then also, I think that basically you've got to balance it up. And maybe Trossard has played so many minutes, as has Saliba, who's obviously left at home as well. And I just feel as if, you probably need to harness that form going into that game. And I think personally, the majority of times, Martinelli is still in a place where he's much more effective coming on and using his blistering pace to basically wear down, tired defenders as a substitute, I've got to say. And I think he's super, at doing that, really. I'm sure he wouldn't want to be sort of kind of cast as that forever, but basically he's particularly effective. And Trossard has just been sensational this season. Trossard was disappointing against Liverpool because I just thought games caught up with him, basically. And so he needed a rest. The other one that I really liked, actually, at Portsmouth was Nwaeri. So I know we've spoken about him a lot. I thought he played well. Yeah, so I thought he was good. I thought he was really sort of kind of positive, strong, always looking forward. And basically, I liked him. I thought he played well. So that was another positive sign. But I'd probably go with Martinelli. And I'd also probably think, about Jesus as well, because, it's, we've got this debate, but I do like Martinelli, and I think it would be a shame to take a player out who's just scored a hat-trick. It was funny, wasn't it? Because we spoke to Arteta pitch side afterwards, didn't we? And Arteta was saying that basically he told me yesterday that he fancied himself from a set piece. I can't
really.
Yeah. And he said, yeah. And basically, because you've got a better memory than me. I couldn't quite remember his ability in the air, but it was fantastic. It's great.
Yeah, well, I mean, as I say, that was only really from when he just signed. Like, I don't remember him scoring many headers or having much aerial. I think he may have scored a header at Liverpool last season, actually, at Anfield. Like when I think it was curled into the box and he kind of got a little flick on and it went back post. But again, it wasn't like these examples for instance. And it's clearly something where now a conversation's coming up about if he could be used more so centrally. That's always been this kind of undertone of Martinelli is would he perhaps be better suited as a centre forward? Because when he plays on the left-hand side, so often what you find is that his end product or his decision-making in the final third, in the final moment, hasn't quite been there. And so would it be better as if he was out of the wide area and put into the centre-forward role to kind of run in behind, make those runs that he's so good at, and maybe get more from it. But the problem is now is Arsenal got so many centre-forward options. Jesus, Havertz, Gyökeres, Merino arguably as well, So that was interesting. And Merino, speaking of Merino, I thought Merino was fabulous. I really did. And he's not played the 6 role that often, if at all, for Arsenal. And I remember when he first joined, everyone thought he was a defensive midfielder. He's proven that very wrong in what he's given. And Arteta was very strong on that in the Liverpool press conference earlier in the season, where he basically said, Merino's not a defensive player. I've not picked him because he's a defensive player. He's picked him because he thinks he's the player to win them games and can get the most of them. And there are sometimes, I think, when Merino starts in midfield, the game can kind of pass him by sometimes. And I think I get to the end of the game where I'm doing the player ratings and I'm like, what did he do? I'm trying to. Well, I can't quite remember something that really sticks in my mind. But this game, I thought he and the midfield, and you mentioned one area you impressed as well. I thought the midfield was exciting to see start as a 3 because it was very offensive minded. It probably contributed to how they went behind at the beginning because there was kind of a lack of cohesion and understanding, and the partnerships weren't normal for what they've come to expect. But in the end, Arsenal kind of just built up a head of steam, didn't they, and just kind of blitzed them. But yeah, I thought Merino was good, but Eze maybe a little bit quiet again.
Eze was a little bit quieter, yeah, which was a bit frustrating. I totally agree with Merino. If Merino was playing Sunday League, right, basically he'd be winning Club Man of the Year, wouldn't he? Yeah. He's such a good positive influence and spokesman.
He's player, 100%.
Yeah. Brilliant. But he's just committed. He gives absolutely everything for the team, for the club, for the squad. Everything. And basically, I just really, really like him as a personality. He speaks well. You can see why he's in the leadership group. He's great. Really, really good. And every squad, every team needs that player. And I think Merino is Arsenal's glue, basically. I do like him. He's not always the most spectacular, but he contributes with goals, performances. You're right. I agree sometimes about sort of almost feels like passed by. But, he's such a good personality and sort of versatile player. Is really, really excellent from that thing. The other one was Madueke, I think.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about
Madueke ends up providing 2 corners and effectively 2 goals. But what a bizarre game that was.
Weird.
Because
I think
I didn't think he started it very well. He gives the ball away in the build-up to, yes, it's 3 minutes, but he gave the ball away. He was a bit sloppy. He looked a bit, I don't know. Yeah. It feels a bit cruel to say it, but am I playing at Portsmouth sort of thing in the cup? And basically, clearly, he wants to be playing all the, big games. And I really feel as if he's been a positive signing overall. And we saw flashes of excellence with his delivery, and then flashes of mind-numbing frustration that basically, he wins a penalty, takes it, and then with the goalkeeper completely committed, side foots it wide of the target. I mean, and that kind of almost summed up his afternoon, that basically he's given him the eyes, put the keeper down, and still side footed it wide. I mean, and it felt like that a little bit for him, really. Such a talented kid. And I think he always comes across so well, but it felt to me as if wasn't quite sure whether he was in the game yesterday, to be honest with you, and yet he still ended up, well, it was 2 assists, wasn't it? So it's, bizarre. It was a bizarre game. I don't know what you made of it, really. But.
It was, I enjoyed it as a game. I think it was an entertaining one. A Portsmouth crowd were excellent throughout the game and made it a real spectacle, and that goal gave them belief. It was, Arteta said afterwards, it was like the nightmare start, really. You don't want to give them any hope at all, and you've done the exact opposite, of that. But I thought Madueke, if anything, kind of represented the overall performance, because there was the good, there was the bad, and there was the bizarre, at times. The penalty itself is just strange. I don't know about you. I prefer a Victor Gyökeres type penalty where you just run up and bang the ball as hard as you can, basically, rather than a stuttered step up and then try and see where the keeper's going before finishing. I just think it's better to know where you're going to plant it and make sure you plant it in that position and don't think about any other factor, basically. So, I think there was an encouragement from Madueke's performance that, again, there's so much talent there. It's difficult. It's similar with Lewis-Skelly, where it's a player I think that needs to play week in, week out to really see the best of him. And he's never going to get that at Arsenal. I mean, categorically, never that is going to happen because of Bukayo Saka in his existence. But I just feel as though he is such a step up on what we've had previously to be a number 2 behind Saka, to rotate Saka out and just feel confident that you're not dropping off in quality so significantly to whoever comes in after him. So, overall, really happy with the performance. Enjoyed the likes of Mikel Merino in particular, and Martinelli, of course. I think Norgard had another decent game at centre-half. I quite enjoyed how I say centre half. There were times in the game where I felt like he forgot he was a centre half and kept moving into midfield. I think it's not that he forgot. It's absolutely by design. I think that the idea that against the lower league opposition, Ben White tucks into that, so it becomes basically a back three, and Norgard then pushes into the 6 role so Merino can escape further up the pitch. And I really enjoyed Norgard's performance. He's probably been underutilised this season, Norgard, but he just comes in and just does a job, and that's what they signed him for.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think he's been that valuable squad man, hasn't he? Really, I agree with you. It was early on. I was looking at the shape and thinking, wow, okay, he's sort of into midfield here.
Yeah,
and then basically it was quite interesting. And Merino almost started very deep and then came through. But it was an interesting one, that. And I do think Norgard, I think as the games kind of clock up and what have you, probably get more minutes. I do think Arteta still has a bit of an issue about trusting his squad and his players overall.
Yeah, I do.
Finally they must see that basically they're getting some sort of kind of game time, really, because we'll find out about Nkape, I think, in the next day or so, won't we? And sort of kind of, I don't know. My hunch would be that maybe it's not as bad as some have been this season, but even so, you don't expect him to see his kind of Chelsea or Forest, do you? But then basically, players have got to be utilised and kind of kept fresh. And I think Madueke was so good at the start of the season because he was understudy for Saka, who was out. And he got into a rhythm and in a groove. Shone also for England, and all of a sudden it's like everyone's going, wow, it's such a good player, and that player's not gone away, but he definitely needs to kind of be in that groove and in that rhythm to be at his best, I think.
Bring your digital life to a whole new level with NordVPN. Choose the fastest VPN on the planet and explore the internet without interruption.
The kind of the excitement of the weekend, because the weekend extended beyond obviously Arsenal for an FA Cup weekend, and there was FA Cup drama, and I kind of want to get your thoughts about the magic of the cups. I know you did some work at Weston-super-Mare before they were cruelly knocked out by Grimsby as well, so close, 2-2 into the final stages. We did see some FA Cup magic with Macclesfield knocking out Crystal Palace, Manchester United and Spurs, of two of the big six. Notorious. I mean, I think we're going to have to start changing this big six thing, because I'm sorry, we just can't discuss United and Spurs in the same circles as Arsenal, Liverpool and City right now, and to a lesser extent Chelsea. They're just so off the pace so consistently. It's almost unfair on teams like Newcastle and Aston Villa and maybe even FA Cup winners Palace at times to discuss them, even though they've been knocked out themselves this competition. But what was your thoughts and highlights of this weekend of FA Cup action?
I loved even Friday night. I thought was brilliant with Wrexham, and that was a great story in itself, wasn't it? Really. Yeah. Calavan-Sundodoi, by the way, scores an absolute world.
Yeah, like Van Basten-esque sort of.
The other night, that is like the story of the game, and basically that's a great goal. It obviously goes to penalties, and former Arsenal academy, Arthur Nwankwo basically is the hero. Fantastic. He's such a nice personality, by the way. And I just thought he owned that shootout. It was great, but what a great story. And then basically into Macclesfield, and I love Macclesfield. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. That's what the cup is about. And I did go last week to sort of kind of see Weston-super-Mare. And the cup meant the world to them. It's their 84th attempt at trying to get into the third round, which is obviously the biggest prize for them. Yes. And then basically that, the cup run means so much for them from a financial point of view. 100%. It's exposure. And honestly, it drives me insane when I hear Premier League clubs and Premier League fans, slagging off the FA Cup, because it's part of the football pyramid. It's part of the football vision. It's not all about the Champions League. It's not all about the Premier League title. It's about the football, global game basically in the country. And basically, the FA Cup means the world to teams like that. And it's the stuff of dreams. It's what makes the whole of football go round, basically. And Macclesfield was such a great story. I was watching it and it was just insane. The second goal was sort of kind of a bit of a farce, wasn't it? Yeah. And and they held on, and hearing Wayne Rooney on the BBC sort of cracking up and sort of almost basically in tears because of his great achievement, I thought it was lovely, and it was just so emotive and emotional. It was just brilliant. It's a brilliant ringing endorsement again for the cup. I'm not a huge fan of all Premier League ties at third and fourth round stage, but even though that the Tottenham Villa game was a really good watch, And then
it was even better watch after full time, mate, with Paulinho.
Wow.
Honestly.
Focus, wasn't it? What's going on there?
Oh, my goodness me. It's great to
I
watch.
think Ollie Watkins is entitled to celebrate, isn't he?
He does kind of go. Do you see how he walks when he's going like this? He's kind of walking diagonally into Paulinho as he does it. And it's like, as an Arsenal fan, I love it. I love that sort of thing. Yeah, just seeing the Spurs players irritated. It's something I enjoy. But at the end of the day, the reaction from Paulinho is almost so exuberant that it's so over the top. Like, yeah, amazing though. Great. Like but I always like when you hear on commentary, it's like, oh, these are the scenes you don't want to see. It's putting a stain on this great. I'm like, are you kidding? This is great.
100%. 100%. Honestly, it always makes me laugh when it basically, goes to penalties. No one wants to see it settled like this. I think you'll find we do.
Everyone who's not a fan of the two teams wants to see this go to
penalties.
penalties.
118 minutes, mate. That's what's that telling you? It's ridiculous. And so honestly, I do feel as if that's another thing. Where's the conversation about the FA Cup losing the replays? Yes, I get it. The frustration for lower teams basically missing out on the cash, and the bridge has to be sort of up there basically to support the lower teams really, because that is hopefully one day the Premier League clubs will do the right thing and basically kind of sort this out. But I do feel as if everyone is approaching the cup with a different mindset to go for it. Yeah. And I actually think it's made the FA Cup much more exciting. Mm-hmm. And basically, we're not, even in West Ham QPR, well, it's all on, isn't it?
I'd get rid of extra time as well.
Yeah. It's an interesting point that I do feel as if, why not? Because, Newcastle, Bournemouth, the last thing Newcastle wanted on Saturday was basically extra time before their semi-final with Man City on Tuesday. Yeah, just don't want it.
Yeah.
So basically, and the end result was the same.
Yeah, and now they've removed away goals in the Champions League. I'd remove it from that. As well, after two legs, after 90 minutes played, you don't need another 30. So
no, you're right.
I'd go straight to penalties on that as well. But I agree with replays being removed at the moment because I just think the schedule is a joke. Yeah. Like how many games there are. If replays are reinstated and Arsenal had drawn this game against Portsmouth, they don't have a free midweek until the fourth round of the FA Cup. That's after that fourth round FA Cup game. That's the next midweek at the moment they've got free because I believe that's the Champions League playoff week. So they would have had to delay the fourth round for Arsenal, played their third round replay in that weekend because there wouldn't have been another time to do it because they're in the League Cup semi-final, which is again another competition which doesn't need two legs in a semi-final, nor does it need. Although, to be fair, they have removed extra time from that, haven't they? They now just go straight to penalties in the League Cup. So, again, I think it's something to consider. But you're right. The financial aspect for those lower league teams needs to be reconsidered. But, yeah, Macclesfield, amazing. I think they'd earned like £300,000 reaching the third round and then getting to the fourth round, got them another £115,000, which will be transformative, for that team. And I'd made the mistake of tweeting out a full time saying, what a story for Macclesfield Town. It's not Macclesfield Town. Macclesfield Town was gone in 2020. It's Macclesfield FC, now, and that shows just how out of the loop so many of us are regarding kind of the stories of these clubs and what they're going through, and the fact that they were dissolved in 2020, rebirthed a month later as Macclesfield FC to then get to the FA Cup third round 5 years later is just glorious. So
it was wonderful. It wasn't even about Crystal Palace, was it? I know it adds to it because they're FA Cup holders. Yeah, but it was all about Macclesfield and their glory. And basically, making it in any way about, Palace is just the wrong take. It's all about Macclesfield. It's all about their glory. And I did feel sorry for Palace because I just think Palace, what a story. One of the all-time great FA Cup finals, by the way, all-time great. And basically, it was astonishing. So good. And then, you fast forward 6 months, and it's just they're out at the first hurdle, and that's heartbreaking for them. But it was all about Macclesfield. It was all about that kind of incredible stories of the sort of the hero captain basically on his snow tractor in midweek clearing the pitch, and honestly the owner buying the club on right move and then taking him to Ibiza.
After 4 days of drinking, he said
it was great. I thought it was just brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah,
it's great stuff. Brilliant,
amazing. We don't know the result of the draw, of course, if you listen to this later than Monday evening, because this is going out on Monday afternoon. But I mean, Arsenal will be wanting a home tie against a lower league opposition side, you'd say. And, you know that Macclesfield are going to get Grimsby in the next round. That's nailed on, isn't it? So hopefully they get an away game at a big Premier League club to get as much money as they can. But from an Arsenal point of view, I think they're going to be hoping for another lower league side. But Newcastle away he's on the cards as well.
I know. I actually, I felt a bit sorry for Bournemouth actually, because to pull their way back and then basically in normal time and then to do it in extra time again. When are they going to get their luck?
I know, it is unbelievable. Just lost Semenyo, who's then scored in a 10-1 win for Manchester City. 9 different goal scorers in that game, 2 own goals in that game as well, but 9 different scorers. Is when you see, like, obviously City have just drawn 3 on the bounce in the league and given Arsenal the opportunity to open the gap up to 8, now 6. Are you seeing that result? Are you seeing the arrival of Semenyo? You reported the story that Arsenal have got an interest in Mark Guehi, but that'd be more so for the summer if Man City don't buy him now. And I think if I was a betting man, I'd say last week of the window I could see City really pushing hard for that deal. Having seen those games and seen City more recently, and I know that we kind of go up and down in terms of judging City and how realistic their title chances are, but where are you at with Arsenal and their title hopes after another week of Premier League games and these FA Cup fixtures and transfers?
We have been here before, basically, with the title race, basically, in terms of Arsenal and City, and I do feel that this is the sort of kind of team fit you fear in the rear view mirror, isn't it? And look, I actually think that Mark Guehi would be a more significant, bigger signing for City at this stage than Semenyo, basically. I do like Semenyo. I think he's such a good player, versatile, clearly a very sort of kind of intelligent player on the pitch, a leader, and he's backed himself basically to go to City, where they've got an absolute wealth of attacking options, and fair play to him. It's really exciting. But I do feel as if City's Achilles heel at the moment is defensively, isn't it? And so it's whether they make that push for Mark Guehi. I mean, I think Mark Guehi is really interesting because also, what about the player? It's got to come down to his viewpoint as well. It's interesting to see because he spoke to Palace fans after the game at Macclesfield, didn't he? He sort of kind of, for people who haven't seen the pictures, he went over to the away end. It was partly because they were clearing the pitch, but I think partly also he kind of engaged and spoke to the fans. And he's such an engaging character, he really is. And I thought fair play to him as captain to speaking to kind of disillusioned, upset fans. Brilliant, I thought that was great. And I just think Palace must have, they do have a threshold in mind where they've got to evaluate what he could potentially bring in terms of Premier League finish, in terms of European success, and basically saving his wages, that sort of thing. But the FA Cup has gone now. And so you think if City make an offer of around 40, which seems crazy with 6 months left, then they are undoubted favourites now. But if the player leaves it until the summer, then he definitely has more options, Arsenal being one of them, I'm sure. Even then, I think City would still be very much in the mix to sign him as a free. But then comes into the equation Liverpool again, Bayern Munich, I'm told, are very, very keen, really pushing hard as well. And so, I honestly think if City get Mark Guehi, then I think it would be a huge boost for Guardiola. I do also think, I wonder, at some juncture, we're going to sort of kind of sit back and say, wow, why is City doing this? It's sort of out of kilter, basically. There's son Donnarumma, who's not a Guardiola goalkeeper, but he's been brilliant. And, Semenyo, basically. I just feel as if they're making one hell of a last push for Pep this season, in the transfer. So I think that's why I think City is still a team very much to be feared.
Yeah, they've got the Manchester derby, which Man United will have back Brian Mbeumo and Amad Diallo for as they return from AFCON, and that means they'll both be back, of course, when they then go to the Emirates, Man United, in just over a week's time from that too. So, an interesting, they've drawn their last 3 league games. Will they recover? It's a big statement win, could be a big boost of confidence if they win the derby, and then Arsenal, of course, have got that trip to Nottingham Forest, another game that they failed to win last season, but they've got such a good record this season of returning those results into wins this time around, and they'll be less rested than Forest, who don't have any midweek action like Arsenal do in the League Cup, and we've seen in the past that sometimes that has affected how Arsenal have played the next game. But the depth in the squad this season, as we've seen, has really helped them, I think, to deal with those runs of games. Do you think he'll be looking at the Chelsea game or the Forest game with more importance, Arteta, this week?
Forest, I feel. I think that basically in the grander scheme of things, I don't think that in no way do I mean then you write off Chelsea or rest.
Yeah.
But basically, I do feel as if Forest, I think that, has got to be the most important one to kind of keep the run going, to kind of keep the level there, keep the distance. Forest will be a really hard game, really hard, I think, because they're basically, people sort of said to me, kind of after sort of Man City won there, they didn't. City didn't play that well. I thought they had to be absolutely brilliant, to be honest, to, in a different style to win that game, because I thought City, Forest were really on it, really aggressive and strong and powerful. And I think after losing and going out the FA Cup at Wrexham, where Sean Dyche was absolutely brutal in his criticism of his team, I think you'll see a reaction. And so therefore, I think Arsenal will need to be absolutely focused and on it at Forest. Otherwise, could easily come unstuck there, because that's such a hard place to go. It really is. So I genuinely think that the basic Forest will probably be seen as in the bigger scheme of things, really important game. But, Chelsea's an opportunity, I think, basically to kind of progress in that competition too. Yeah,
I think it's really important. I mean, let's talk about it, because the League Cup is a competition that Arsenal haven't won since, 93, and we've only won it twice. And you're going to talk about, that game, because that's your flashback for this week.
Yeah, I was going to do the semi-final, hopefully save the final for the final. But basically for 93, when Arsenal overcame Crystal Palace in a 2-legged semi-final, I think they won the first one, didn't they? 3-1, and then basically obviously completed the job at home. Ian Wright, Crystal Palace legend, had left, but sort of kind of 18 months just over, basically, previously to join, basically, it's sort of kind of sort of the back end of sort of or September 91, I think, basically, and then became an absolute Arsenal legend against his old team, and an opportunity there. Ian Wright scored in both semi-final games.
Yeah,
I just thought, wow, I remember doing both of those games and being at those. And then also kind of, fun enough, I saw both finals actually, as 87, 93. You're absolutely right. I can't believe that Arsenal, record FA Cup winners, 14 times winning. Obviously, glorious history of winning the title. And yet their record in the League Cup, by comparison, is pretty lamentable, basically.
Yeah.
They haven't won it by, this year it'll be 33 years. Amazing. Yeah. Absolutely amazing. And they tend to go for it. They've reached finals and semi-finals. And I think basically, I tell you, it was really interesting. And if you haven't watched it, was basically, I think in the sort of kind of, Alan Smith was a guest last week in the Mixer show, wasn't it? Basically. Yeah. And talking about and I think they clicked really nicely in those 2 semi-finals. And they worked well, and that was almost the sort of kind of the secret of success in those games, basically. And then they reached Wembley in the semi-final against Sheffield Wednesday, and do a double against Sheffield Wednesday and win the cup double. But in those games, that partnership clicked well. But Alan Smith was talking last week, saying that Wrighty, was a brilliant player, and not taking it away from an Arsenal legend, of course. Alan Smith is himself, but basically for whatever reason. And it sort of felt as if it had the ingredients, little and large, never quite clicked, basically. And he didn't quite know where Wrighty was going to be in the same way that it did with Merson, for example, and it didn't quite work. But basically, those 2 games were 2 games in which it did click and it did work, and Arsenal got through. It was a London derby, of course, and basically really hard game. And I think, you know, the parallels are very, very similar, really. Sort of Arsenal two-legged semi-final, big test for Liam Rosenior. And I do think that all sorts of memories back in '93. Actually, it's just amazing that Arsenal haven't won it since then.
I know, it is staggering, really. You know, finals, as you mentioned, you know, the Birmingham one sits painfully in my memory. The Manchester City one, when Mustafi kind of was just beaten by Aguero, and it's just painful moments, really, and mistakes that you don't see really in this Arsenal team anymore. And the depth that they now have, and the potential that they have, and you know, my flashback is last season, where I painfully had gone up to Newcastle to watch them respond after the 2-0 defeat at the Emirates, which was again very disappointing, to only then be beaten 2-0 and lose 4-0 on aggregate in a semi-final. And the record that Arteta's got recently in semi-finals in terms of scoring across all competitions isn't particularly good. You know, that one goal against PSG, we go back to the FA Cup semi-final. They won against Manchester City and scored twice, but you know, 0 goals in those games against Liverpool in 2021 when they got to the League Cup semi-final as well. You know, 0-0 at Anfield, but then 2-0 defeat at the Emirates. God bless his soul, Diogo Jota, really important in that game and taking Liverpool to the final, which they would go on to play Chelsea in. But it was, it's for me. Not only is it important, but I think the Chelsea element of this is also important for Arsenal, because that 1-1 draw at Stamford Bridge early in the season was such a frustrating game for me. Watching Arsenal, yes, without Saliba and Gabriel, who we expect both will probably start in this game, because the lack of depth they've got there as well, and the injuries they've got, they haven't got much choice. But I just think it's important to impose themselves on a Chelsea side away from home, get an important result away from home to take back to the Emirates as well, be that either by, you know, a good draw or, more importantly, a victory, and to really respond. Because what do you make of the Man City element of they've won these League Cup trophies in April, and it's given them that springboard to go on and win the title so many times?
Yeah, I really believe that. I do feel as if, you know, even dating back to Jose Mourinho with Chelsea, you know, his first trophy as a Chelsea manager was the League Cup. And basically, I do feel winning breeds winning. And I really, you know, I really feel as if this is a big opportunity for Arsenal to kind of lay down that marker and basically make sure, you know, that they're on it, basically. And I do feel that I always think that, you know, there was one, wasn't there, sort of kind of famously, I don't know, 20 odd years ago now, but where Villa rested loads of players for you know, for a game, and then their season went to pot, basically. And I don't think this element that you should throw it in is just so misplaced. But equally, while I don't think Arsenal would for a moment throw it in, I think that basically, you know, losing is a setback, and you kind of all of a sudden you need to kind of show again sort of personality to come back. And I just think winning those sort of trophies just gives you an edge, gives you a belief. Look, I've been very clear on this. I think that Arteta won FA Cup to his name. He would throw the Community Shield in, but basically I don't. And basically, I just think, you know, that's bearing in mind what he's done as a transformative manager and job. I don't think it's enough. I think Arsenal crave trophies and success. And I know everyone wants the Premier League title and the Champions League, but I do feel as if you can't go that long without winning the trophy, in my view. And for everything that he's done an exceptional job. I think that that would be my thing. And I think basically even a Carabao Cup would be an almighty fillet and a huge boost. And I do think that that's why it's been important to the likes of Guardiola, Mourinho, Chelsea City, and, you know, others along the way. Big teams take it seriously because it's another trophy, it's another success, it's feel-good factor, it lifts the squad.
It absolutely does. And I think that, you know, the fact that Man City are the other team still in it alongside Newcastle, they play their 2 legs. If it's an Arsenal-City final, depending on how close Arsenal and City are, hypothetically, if they both reach the final, that could be a real indicator of who can get kind of that first real blow on one another, an important point of the run-in as well. And if it is still close going into those weeks, that final has an extra element of narrative to it as well. So it's so important, I think, Arsenal get there. It's important that Arsenal knock out Chelsea, and maybe Newcastle end up doing Arsenal a favour. But, you know, the history we've just done with our flashback means there's no guarantees when you play Newcastle and you're Arsenal in the League Cup. Let's get some predictions then ahead of the game against Chelsea. What are you thinking for the first leg?
Oh, don't. No, I'm going to go 1-1, and I think that would basically be a decent actually return, because what you want to do is basically just take them back to the Emirates on level terms, basically.
Yeah. I'm going to go 1-0 Arsenal. I'm just going to nick a 1-0 in the game, and just it might even be like a first half goal, and then they just ride the wave into the end and stay astute and strong. Because Arteta's always been very clear on two-legged games that like the full time in the first leg is half time. You know, he doesn't think about them as individual games. He sees two-legged affairs as one game with two halves at different stadiums, and he manages those games in certain ways as a result of that. So very curious to see how strategically he sets up for that game. And obviously it being Liam Rossinia's kind of first real test. I was at Charlton on Saturday to see Chelsea win 5-1. It didn't feel like a 5-1 game. It didn't feel like the gap was that significant between the two sides at all. Charlton did cause them problems, and they ended up getting kind of few just kind of random strange goals, Chelsea, in the game. But they looked vulnerable. A better team would have got a lot of joy, I think, against Chelsea on the day. So it'll be interesting to see how Arsenal get on Wednesday. John, what have you got coming up this week, and what people can look forward to?
Oh, now there's a thing, actually. Yeah, we did actually speak to Mikel Merino, didn't we? After after Portsmouth, and so basically going to sort of kind of do a bit of that. I'm also just about to pen a piece about my love for the FA Cup, and have a little look back on why it was such a successful weekend. And then I'm doing Chelsea Arsenal on Wednesday night, and I'm sure I'll see you there, won't I?
The treble of TC and JC in the building that we've got together. Yes, from a personal point of view, that Mikel Merino stuff is definitely featuring. But the main thing is Kai Havertz. I've got a feature on him tomorrow on the return of King Kai and why he could be the difference for Arsenal between now and the end of the season in the title race. So go look out for that one when it drops tomorrow morning. But thank you so much always for tuning in. That'll be Tuesday, by the way. Thank you so much for listening. John, thank you for your time. Always appreciate it.
Oh, no, always great to see you. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for tuning in, people. Drop a like, subscribe, all the usual YouTube-y stuff. Leave a comment on your thoughts on the things we've discussed today. Share it with your friends, of course. You can listen on audio platforms as well, so leave us a 5-star review if you're watching us over on Spotify or iTunes. And we'll see you again very soon. And as always, keep seeing red.
NordVPN, cybersecurity built for every day.